Kevin Minton, CEO of Chief Executive Boards.
Thank you, Robin, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us for today's webinar, The Principles of Persuasion. Our goal is to offer tips on utilizing persuasion and the tools that reinforce them that can positively influence and motivate people. My name is Kevin Minton, and I'm the owner and CEO of Chief Executive Boards. We're headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina, with an executive peer advisory boards in multiple cities all throughout the U.S. I'll be your host today, and I'd like to invite you to stay tuned for future webinars on our website, located at the bottom of this slide. Before we just dive straight into our main topic, you may be curious to learn a little bit more about Chief Executive Boards International. We are an executive peer advisory board service with local and national boards located throughout the eastern United States and the Midwest. And our members gather to share knowledge and experience and insight. The purpose of CEBI is really to help CEOs, presidents, and business owners to share ideas and experience to avoid pitfalls and the potholes that they may have already experienced. In other words, we really just help steer you from reinventing the wheel. Our members receive unvarnished advice in a safe and a confidential environment, typically unavailable elsewhere. It's kind of like having your own personal think tank. So what keeps you up at night? Well, our members can avail of an advisory board service. They can attend educational summits. They have access to other CEBI members, our libraries, our workshops, and webinars, just like this one today. So before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, your questions will be posted in the question panel box and answered during or after the session. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be available for you to review on our website within a couple of days. So let's get started with our webinar, The Principles of Persuasion and How to Build Strong Client Relationships. First off, I'd like to introduce our guest presenter, Mr. David Rippey. He participates as a Chief Executive Boards International Advisor. He is also the founder and president and CEO of Trusted Advisors Guild and Celestia International, which is a strategic marketing, communications, and creative services firm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. He specializes in the development of strategic marketing and communications campaigns, and he's worked for such clients as IBM, Wendy's, Microsoft, Sony, and many others. In today's session, you're going to learn the social science behind each principle, why it works and how to apply it, and the key principles that will make a huge difference in your sales and marketing efforts. This webinar will probably last about 45 minutes, and we'll take a few minutes at the end for questions. Our contact details will be listed at the end of the presentation. So at this point in time, I'll turn the webinar over to our featured presenter, Mr. David Rippey. David?
Thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you everyone for joining the webcast today. I really appreciate it. If we could move to the next slide, that'd be great. So as Dale Carnegie said, we are evaluated and classified by what we do, how we look, what we say, and how we say it. And today we're going to show you some tools for how to do that in the best way possible. So let's go to the agenda here. We're really going to cover three things today: the 6 principles of persuasion, which are based on the book Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. How to make sure the man is present, and then the biggest business development flaw in business. So let's move on to the next slide. We're going to jump right into influencing the sales process with the 6 principles of ethical persuasion. Influencing others isn't really luck or magic. It's basically science. There are proven ways to help make you more successful as a marketer, as a sales organization, or as an office politician, or maybe a better way to phrase that would be an office diplomat. Dr. Cialdini, who's a Regents Professor of Psychology and Marketing at Arizona State University, spent 30 years studying the ways that people are influenced. And he basically synthesized this down to 6 key principles, which you can see on the screen. And those principles are reciprocation, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus. And we're going to end up going through all of those today. One of the things that he figured out after all of his research and working in various industries while he was doing this research, working in the field hand in hand with the people, with salespeople and marketers, was he discovered that people's ability to understand the factors that affect their behavior is surprisingly poor, and that most people cannot explain why they made a particular decision. But for our purposes today, as a marketing team or as a sales department or the head of a company, is that if you can identify the underlying factors that influence decisions, it means you'll know how to use them to get more positive results. So the knowledge that we're about to share today needs to be used with integrity, and you can't use it to push shoddy goods or set up unfair prices or business practices, because when they're used ethically, they're very positive. But when they're used as unethically as a weapon of influence, any short-term gains you'll see will be followed by long-term losses. But once you've earned their trust, it's almost impossible. Once you've earned a customer's trust by using these principles, it's almost impossible for a competitor to dislodge you. So that's enough of the preamble. Let's go right into principle number 1. The first principle is the principle of reciprocation. And it's basically first you, then me, then you. And what that means is that reciprocation recognizes that people feel indebted to those who do something for them or give them a gift. I do something for you, you feel compelled to do something for me, and then I do something for you. So the implication is you have to go first. Give something, give information, free samples, give a positive experience to people, perhaps a free service call or waive a fee on a service call, and they'll want to give you something in return. So the science behind this can be found, and there's lots of studies, but I'm only going to talk about one on this particular principle. Randy Gardner did a study, an experiment, that tested whether sticky notes could persuade people to respond to a marketing survey. So he sent out 1/3 of the surveys with a handwritten sticky note requesting completion. He sent 1/3 of the audience, of the target audience, with a blank sticky note, and 1/3 without a sticky note. So the results were kind of interesting, which is that those who got a handwritten sticky note requesting them to fill out the survey, 69% of those people responded to the survey. Those who got a blank sticky note, there was a 43% response, and those who got no sticky note, there was a 34% response. So no sticky note, 34%, blank sticky note, 43%, handwritten note, 69% response rate. So that handwritten note, that simple thing of a handwritten note, activated the principle of reciprocation and got a 2 times response as no note at all. Not only did the people who responded to the handwritten sticky note respond at twice the rate, but the quality of the answers they gave on the survey was significantly better. So what this means to you is that you can apply this to, as a reciprocation principle, you can apply it to free samples, because people who receive a free, unexpected gift are more likely to listen to a product's features, they're more likely to donate to a cause, or they're more likely to tip a waitress. The gifts don't have to be expensive or even material. They can be information and they can be favors. Both of those things work. So it can be service, it can be information, it can be concessions. just has to be unexpected and something that you do because you want to do it. So let's move on to the second principle. The second principle is scarcity. In fundamental economic theory, scarcity relates to supply and demand. Basically, there's less of something. When there's less of something, the more valuable it is, like diamonds or gold or whatever. The more rare and uncommon a thing, the more people want it. Examples of that are the frenzy over the holidays, the latest holiday toy, or people camping overnight to pounce on the latest iPhone, or the perception of getting great deals by getting up at 4 a.m. and sitting outside your favorite department store for a Black Friday special where they have 40 of a particular TV set at X off. And study after study shows that people, they love to have access to things that are scarce, that are unique or exclusive. So, but they have to be genuinely scarce. They really have to be unique features, and they have to be exclusive in their the character trait. This is why limited time offers work, or limited seating for an event works. So you think about that and you say, okay, well, how does that relate to me? Well, how it relates to you is this. It could be that you make your prospect or client aware of rare access to a respected expert on your staff, or access to your CEO. It could be legal, not illegal, legal inside information that you have on impending legislation or a ruling. It could be a white paper that you only make available to select prospects, or it could be a study by a respected industry trade of which you're a member. So the principle scarcity works very powerfully because people like to know that they are part of an exclusive club. So let's go on to the third principle. The third principle is authority, and showing and knowing. And the basic premise of this principle is that people respect authority. They want to follow the lead of real experts, not artificial experts. Business titles, impressive clothing, and even driving an expensive high-performance automobile are proven factors that lend credibility to any individual. Now, I'm not recommending that you go out and buy a Mercedes and dress in real expensive clothes to try and make people think that you're more legitimate or more credible than you are, but those things do have an impression on people. Giving the appearance of authority can actually increase the likelihood that others will comply with requests, even if their authority is illegitimate. And again, as we've talked about a couple of times now, it's important that you operate these principles with integrity. So how does it apply to marketers? Well, when people are uncertain, they look outside themselves for information to guide their decisions. And given the incredible influence of authority figures, it's wise to incorporate testimonials from legitimate recognized authorities to help persuade prospects to respond or make purchases. And you can do this by establishing your professionalism, your industry knowledge, your credentials and certifications. And then also you can do this, you can neutralize a perceived weakness or disadvantage of yours as a company by bringing out your weakness first. This minimizes the weakness in the prospect's mind and doesn't allow it to grow into a big issue. So authority is a huge issue principle in the principles of persuasion. So let's go on to the fourth principle. Fourth principle is pretty easy here. The concept is to get buy-in of something that is small in scope, which then makes it easier to expand out because the prospect is already committed in their mind, and you and your service then become an already known commodity. So you start small and you build. Usually that's a pilot or a small piece of a larger project. You're trying to take away or mitigate risk here. And you build off an existing commitment. So you say, we've already been doing this kind of work for you. How about if we try X? We can do it a pilot so that there's no significant costs involved. And then if that works, then we'll move, we'll grow to we'll expand the scope of the project. The other key component here is a public commitment. When a person states something out loud, they find it very hard to go back on their word. And so as an example, you say, so if I can do this for you and get the outline proposal prepared, will you be willing to introduce me to your boss? Or if my firm commits to ordering the materials today, will you agree to X? Or if I can meet the competitor's price, will you place the order with us? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a public commitment, that verbal public commitment, because people do not want to go back from their word. So when it comes to voluntary choices, if the first three components are done right, the client willingly and voluntarily selects your firm because you're already working with them. They move from knowing nothing about your firm or even perhaps have skepticism about you toward you being a known entity that they trust. It's very, very, very powerful because they're voluntarily selecting you, and you are no longer in the sales prospecting cycle. You're in the product buying cycle or the service buying cycle, which is different than prospecting. Let's go on to principle number 5, which this one sounds, fairly basic, but it's actually very powerful and very true, which is you can't, that's the principle of liking. And you can't really develop a rapport with anyone. You can't develop a solid business relationship if you don't like the person you're dealing with or the person doesn't genuinely like you. So you could have the best price, you could have the best product, but if the person doesn't like you or if you come off as not liking that person, you're not going to get that deal. So what you need to do, what we recommend that you do, or Dr. Cialdini recommends that you do, is to uncover similarities. So similarities can be your kids, could be music, could be a mutual interest in sports or photography or boating, whatever, some sort of hobby. You look for areas of genuine complement. So complement the furnishings in their office or the photos of kids on their desk or their awards on their wall, and maybe you went to the same alma mater or something like that. Then also you look for areas of cooperation, like you volunteer at the same cause or you can assist them with X. Again, this has to be genuine. It cannot be manipulative. You can't put on a fake smile, say all the right words, and then trash the person to a colleague on the way to the parking lot. Another part of this is that people prefer to say yes to those they know and like. People are more likely, much more likely, to favor others who are physically attractive or similar to themselves or who give them compliments. Even something as random as having the same name as your prospects can increase your chances of making a sale. Now, obviously, you're not going to change your name and you're not going to, fake things to gain favor. But in a study in 2005, there was a survey that mailed out to strangers with a request to return the survey. And the request was signed by a person whose name was either similar or dissimilar to the name of the recipient. So, for example, Robert James might receive a survey request from the similarly named person, Bob Ames. Those who received the survey from someone with a similar sounding name were twice as likely to fill out and return the packet as those who had a dissimilar name. So the results were 56% returned it versus 30%. So that shows that people bond over commonalities. Even though Robert James and Bob Ames aren't the same person, they might live in different cities, the fact that their names are similar caused a higher response rate, which is very interesting. So one of the things that marketing and sales can do is to honestly report on the extent to which the product or service or the people who are providing the product or service are similar to the audience, and they need to know the audience's challenges, the preferences, and so on. So the principle of liking basically is saying get to know and like your prospect or your customers, and you'll create a much stronger bond. That might seem like common sense, but a lot of salespeople don't do that. So let's go on to principle number 6. This is consensus. So it's people proof, people power. And when people are uncertain about a course of action, they tend to look to those around them to guide their decision-making process. They want to talk to somebody who has been there before. Especially want to know what everyone else is doing, especially their peers, which is why laugh tracks on comedy shows exist. Because it's easier to laugh along with other people because you know it's funny. Versus if you've ever been into a theater, watching a comedy and there's no one else in the theater, or very few people in the theater, and nobody else is laughing, you tend to not laugh yourself. But when you're in a theater and there are a lot of people laughing, you tend to laugh along. It somehow becomes more funny. So Dr. Cialdini and his colleagues at Arizona State, they ran an experiment to see how that would work. And so they did some signs in hotel rooms about towel reusage. It's an environmental issue. If hotels can do less laundry, then there's less soap, less water, less electricity to process all that linen. So they wrote 4 types of signs, and they put them in rooms. Number 1 was they cited environmental reasons to encourage visitors to reuse their towels, and they had a 38% response rate. Number 2 was they said that the hotel would donate a portion of year-end laundry savings to an environmental cause, and that had a 36% response rate. They said, number 3 was they said, we've already given a donation to a cause, and would you please join us? And that had a 46% response rate. And then number 4, which is the one that worked the best, was they said that the majority of our guests reused their towels at least once during their stay. And they had a 48% response rate of people who then reused their towels. And that was because of the principle of consensus, which is, oh, other people are doing it, I should do it too. So when guests found out that most people who stayed in the same hotel reused their towels, they were more likely to comply. So how does that apply to marketers and sales teams? Well, testimonials from satisfied customers, they show your target audience that people who are similar to them have enjoyed your product or service, and they'll be more likely to become customers themselves if there's a testimonial that shows, or a series of testimonials that show that other people have been in their situation and have found your service to be of value. And case studies, others' past successes, and the next slide will show you, we're not going to go there yet, but in the next slide we'll show you how to get a good case study written. And then we already talked about testimonials, and I want to go back to client lists. A lot of companies, they're afraid to put together a client list because they think that their competitors are going to poach that list. But if it's a strong relationship with your clients, somebody seeing your customers' names on a list, they're not just going to all of a sudden go and do business with somebody else just because they called them up. So what is recommended here is that your client list, your case studies, and your testimonials is that you determine the best place and time to use these materials. You don't just stuff them in a folder and give them to the salespeople and then hope that a prospect reads them. You don't just bunch them up in a batch of testimonials and create a one sheet. You slice and dice those and distribute those assets in various places around your website, in emails and letters and presentations and in follow-up letters. A very powerful thing to do is to have a testimonial at the top of an email or at the top of a letter, because it causes people to want to read further and not just dismiss it as junk mail. So use those testimonials in a lot of different ways. Don't just put them on a sheet or put them on one static web page. Have them be fly-ins on your website so that depending on the page you're on, different testimonials are coming up. So let's move to the next slide and take a look at how to create a case study. So we've done a lot of this, and one of the favorite things that we do is we use, and I didn't invent this or anything, this came from a gentleman named Tom Sant. He is a world-renowned proposal generation master, and he's sold billions of dollars worth of projects using his methodologies for proposal writing and for case studies. So the PAR method is basically P stands for problem. What issue confronted the client? The A part of it is what actions did you take? And then the R is what were the quantifiable results? So what you want to do is you want to be concise, and you want to clearly, you want to be concise, and you want to clearly state the results. You don't want to give too much detail because people don't care about detail. They just want to feel comfortable and confident that you're going to do what you say you're going to do and that you've already done it for other people. So again, you don't want to use too much detail, and you definitely don't want to use too many words because it won't get read. And most companies, many companies, maybe not most, but many companies spend too much time on the detail, and they use way too many words, and the case study becomes neutralized or doesn't have the value or benefit that you're looking for because, as I said, too many words have been used. If you don't like the word problem, you can change that word to challenge, and so it would be the CAR method instead of the PAR method. But it's a very powerful way to get your case studies written. And I would suggest that if you have a professional copywriter on staff, or if you use an advertising agency or marketing services firm, whatever you use, give it to somebody who is a professional copywriter of marketing copy, not a technical writer. Because a technical writer is going to write based on here's the facts. They're not going to put, they're not going to merge persuasive copy with informational copy. And what you want is a good combination of both. You don't want to go over the top. You don't want to oversell, but you also do want to put in some adjectives that are more persuasive, and technical writers tend to not do that. So let's go on to a couple of bonus slides. And one of the things that I always talk about is, let's say that you've used the principles and you have a great first meeting with a client. You're really not out of the woods. Your salesperson still needs to make sure that there's a real opportunity there. And most salespeople are terrified of ensuring that there's a real opportunity. They have what's called happy ears. They hear what they want to hear. And I'm not exaggerating that point at all. It really is one of these things where they want deals, they want to please their boss, they want to sell something, but they're not necessarily, and they're afraid of rejection. So it's very common, I've seen it over and over again, that salespeople, they get these happy ears, as I just said, and they believe that any activity is good activity, even if it's not qualified. So the making sure the man is present is essential. It's basically, MAN stands for money, authority, and need. Money is simply, does the prospect have a real budget? If the answer is, we might have signed some money, but no, there's really not any money for this, I'm just kind of tire kicking, well, it's not a real deal. If the person is not the decision maker, and people will say, well, yeah, I am the decision maker, but they're not really the authority, the salesperson's responsibility is to get to the person of authority. The person they're talking to might be a key influencer, but if they're not the decision maker, all that person has is the ability to say no, not the ability to say yes, and your salespeople have to get to the person who has the ability to say yes. And thirdly, third part of MAN is need. Is there a real problem that must be solved that's a company initiative? It can't be just a nice to have, or it's something we're considering, or it's a project for someone trying to make himself or herself look good. I once drove all the way to Indianapolis, Indiana, to meet with a pharmaceutical company, with a marketing person, the head of marketing in this pharmaceutical company, only to find out that there were going to be big layoffs, and he was trying to figure out what he was going to do for his exit plan. So he's picking my brain on web-based training methodologies and tools that he can use, but he didn't preface it that way. So I went all the way to Indianapolis, had my meeting, and as soon as I was out of that meeting, I realized there was zero opportunity there because he was looking for something completely different, and he wasn't an authority to actually make the decision. So just make sure the man is present, money, authority, and need. Now let's go on to the next slide. As Neil Rackham, the author of best-selling business author of Spin Selling, said, success rests on the critical ability to help others identify value in your offering. Unfortunately, there's an awful lot of organizations out there who are guilty of not communicating that value to their prospects and customers. So let's take a look at the biggest sales and business development flaws that businesses commit. So the biggest number one failure in the business, the biggest business development flaw, I should say, is the failure to reap the benefits of your competitive advantage. So this is based on the work of best-selling writer Janie L. Smith, Creating Competitive Advantage. You can get it on Amazon. I highly recommend that you go and get that book, as well as Dr. Cialdini's book. Both are available on Amazon, or they're actually available, I believe, through CEBI's website, too. There's a way to order. I think there's a way to order there. Kevin can correct me later if I'm wrong. But anyway, the first issue is failure to reap benefits of your competitive advantage. The second is that the company doesn't know they even have a competitive advantage. The third is failure to promote their competitive advantage properly. So you might go through a competitive advantage exercise, and it doesn't end up in any marketing materials, doesn't end up on your website, doesn't end up as part of your 30-second elevator speech or your sales presentations or any of that kind of thing. And the fourth flaw is having a distorted or disconnected message. And Janie Smith's research showed that only 2 of 1,000 CEOs knew their competitive advantage. So what this means to you is that if you can come up with what your strategic competitive advantage is, and if you can communicate it properly, if you can use it in all the marketing and sales assets that you have, there's a high likelihood you'll have an advantage over your competitors, because when only 2 of 1,000 CEOs know their competitive advantage, that's a lot of competition that you can run circles around, because clearly they probably do not have that in place. So let's go to what the 4 traits of a good competitive advantage are. So these are simple. The 4 traits of a good competitive advantage include, number 1, it has to be objective, not subjective. You can't say we're the best. That's not quantifiable. Secondly, it needs to be quantifiable. It can't be arbitrary. 3 is it isn't claimed by your competition. And 4 is it's not a cliche. So I would like you to try this exercise after we're done with this webinar and you're back into your business life. And I'd like you to go and look at your top 3 or 5 competitors' websites. Take an hour, go to their websites, and take a look at them from an unbiased perspective. And that's key. You've got to step outside yourself and look at it from an unbiased perspective. And I've done this several thousand times. And chances are what you'll find is that your website and theirs use a lot of the same phrases, if not identical phrases. The same cliche business jargon, and you'll find that there's little difference between you and everyone else. So just try that test with yourself and see what you think. Or if it's not something that you want to do, have somebody who works for you do it and have them come back to you with a report. Regardless, get that book. Start working on your competitive advantage, because it'll make a huge difference in your sales. So let's go to the next slide and look at some thought starters. There's one thing to say, okay, we need to come up with our competitive advantage, but based on what? So your thought starters can be on a general level. You can look at, terms such as flexible financing or guarantees, which help to mitigate, perceived client risk, or inventory terms that prove your product sells, or materials that can be, that are proven to provide real benefit in the marketplace. On-time delivery is often a very powerful differentiator. A lot of people will say, oh, on time, on budget, but they don't quantify it. You got to go back to the previous slide to see it has to be quantified. Another thought starter is information or business intelligence that a client values. And then, another thought starter could be your specialized training or certifications, like we are. ISO 9000 or IEEE or we're Oracle certified, or whatever is specific to your industry. So let's go to the next slide and get a little bit more specific, so this starts to gel a little bit. So developing your competitive advantage, to go from general strengths to specifics, so instead of just saying good customer service, what you do is say, we provide good customer service. All calls are returned within 1 hour, and a technician is at your location within 6 hours, whatever whatever your criteria there is. Another one would be, say you want to talk about quality. So you quantify that and you say, in 2014, less than 0.5% of our customers returned one of our products. On reputation, over 90% of our business comes from referrals. Good results. After switching to our products, customers averaged 25% increase, productivity increase. So what you can see here is you're not just saying we have good customer service, you're not just saying we believe in quality, or we have a good reputation, or we have a good results, or whatever. What you're basically doing is you're quantifying it so that it gives peace of mind, comfort, and confidence into your prospect or customer base that you're a company that is making it safe for them to do business with. Another thing could be, you have a consistent team. One of the things that I found is people do not like it when you have a lot of turnover and, okay, now he's my salesperson, oh, now she's my support rep, now he's this, and you guys have a revolving door. You want to promote that you have a consistent team. So you might say something like, the average tenure of our employees is 12 years, which then means X. So you define what X is. And trust. People love trust. So our customer retention rate is 95%, twice that of our nearest competitor. Or you might play up, your knowledgeable staff. Our design firm has won more awards than any other firm in the region. Maybe you add a little thing in there. It says, 7 awards in the last 3 years alone. Again, that has to be honest. It has to have integrity associated with it. So these slides are meant to be an overview for you to dive deeper, to go out and get the principles of persuasion, to go out and get the Janie L. Smith book on creating strategic competitive advantage. If you develop your competitive advantage, if you implement the principles of persuasion, and you ensure that your salespeople always know that the man is present, you'll build strong, lasting client relationships. So that is a quick overview of the things that you should look at and try to embed into your sales and marketing culture. So with that, we're open to any kind of questions that you might have.
Okay, David, we do have a few questions already. The first one from Terry. How would our marketing department implement the principles of persuasion?
Well, first of all, get a copy of the book or the CD to listen to it. Secondly, review all your marketing materials, your website, your sales scripts, and convert them over so that they use those principles. Make sure you have customer lists, testimonials, case studies. Find a gift that's important or an important piece of information that you can give salespeople while going on sales calls so they have a leave behind that's more than just the brochure, your brochure where, have something that is of significance to people. It could be just a $22 business book on leadership or a white paper. The marketing department, needs to understand the target audience. We've done previous webinars where we talk about if you don't understand your target audience, it's very hard to sell to them. Learn what they're interested in, not just what you want to sell them. Learn what your target audience wants, what they're interested in, and then adjust your strategy accordingly.
Okay, and the second question is from Kelly, and she asked, is there a technique for repairing a, quote, got off on the wrong foot, quote, situation?
Well, that's the primacy principle. So that is, you never get a chance to make another good first impression. So if you blew it the first time, it's hard to recover. It takes about 7 attempts. But I think that the first thing to do is apologize. Second thing to do is ask, what can we do to make it better? And then and during that apology, if they don't have any idea on what you can do to make it better, then already have a list of the things that you are going to do to make it better. I am sorry we dropped the ball on that proposal. I will, our VP of Sales or our VP of Marketing will be personally involved. Hopefully this is the VP of Sales and Marketing who's saying this. And I will make sure that your needs are handheld by our firm. or we'll guarantee that we're going to give you a 4-hour response time. I don't know the specific situation. If I understood the specific situation, I could probably give more detailed advice, but first apologize and offer a solution, because all they really want is their situation fixed. Now, the other thing to do in that situation is look at, is it a personality rub? Is the salesperson incompatible with the prospect? Because that does happen, and some people just do not get along. I don't know what causes that, but don't keep forcing a salesperson on an organization that is just not right for, their counterpart.
Okay, and David, the last question I have for you is from Patrick. How long should it take for us to come up with our competitive advantage?
Well, that depends on your organization and the people involved. Depends on the personality types and actually how honest you're willing to be with yourselves. So I would recommend that if you don't have a coach or you don't have somebody who's good at that, find a facilitator, some neutral third party who doesn't have your biases. I'd buy the book. If you're going to have a team of people involved, I'd buy the book for each member. I'd have them read it, and then I'd have a brainstorming session. This process could take 2 hours. It could take 2 days, or it could take a year. You clearly do not want to spend a year on it, but it is one of those things where you do want to get it right. And there are plenty of examples in the book on how to do that. But I would probably, my highest recommendation is have a facilitator do it just to keep everybody neutral and not overexerting their own biases, because that messes up a good number of marketing departments and senior teams when there's one strong voice in the room and everybody else is kind of bowing down to that voice. So if you want to get a real clear indication of, or if you want to come up with a good competitive advantage, make sure everybody's neutral and has the same goal in mind.
Okay, thank you, David. And I believe we are going to turn it back over to Kevin Mitten at this point.
Okay, thank you, David and Robin, and thank you for all your questions. I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent in the form of a web link via email, and so you can expect to see that show up in your inbox here fairly shortly. One thing I'd like to remind you of are our upcoming Chief Executive Board events. We do have some additional webcasts that we will be hosting on a monthly basis. The next one is Sales Mastery, Sales Development on February the 25th, followed by Top Grading, Hiring and Retaining Top Talent on March 18th. And then we'll skip a month and turn to Turning Technical Experts into Trusted Advisors on May 13th. So you can find more information about this on our website, and you can also register for go ahead and register for the next webcast event on our website if you so choose to do that. We would invite you to have a visit there. I'd like to thank our presenter, David Rippey, and I hope that you found this to be helpful, and I want to invite you to contact Chief Executive Boards with any questions via this information that you see on the screen here today. And I want to invite you to also please join us for future webinars. We hope you find this to be very helpful to you. We look forward to speaking with you regarding future engagements with Chief Executive Boards and Celestia. And I want to wish all of you a great week ahead. Thank you and farewell. This concludes our webinar.